I want to share the story of a good friend of mine named Courtney. She had lived in Chicago when she was young. In addition to studying in medical school, she helped a friend with the sale of clothes and all sorts of trinkets. And so, according to her, one day they arrived, she did not specify the city, traded, and went to the apartment. The apartment belonged to the relatives of a friend. No one lived in it, so only from time to time visiting relatives stayed. There were very old chests and things like that in the apartment, all that was left of the ancestors, and portraits hung on the walls. They had dinner with a friend and went to bed. And just as Courtney began to fall asleep, her heart suddenly became more anxious than ever. She opened her eyes and saw the portrait looking at her, as it seemed to her. The portrait was of an old man with a long beard. It was a hard look, and she felt uneasy. She turned off the nightlight and tried to sleep. But then something happened, and it was very difficult to believe. But as I remember, her story as much as goosebumps. She heard a rustle, opened her eyes, and saw a large black bird flying out of the portrait. From horror says as much as bad became. She closed her eyes and felt as if bones or something bony were beating against her chest, as if trying to break into it. She began to fight back and scream. Somehow, which was very surprised and scared, I woke up my friend. She was asleep, she says, like a dead woman. She listened incredulously, laughed, and continued to sleep. The light, however, was asked to turn off since they slept in the same room. There was nothing to do but calm down and go to sleep. But that was not the case. It was repeated with even greater force. Courtney herself is a very shy person, and it was awkward for her to wake up her friend again. Tears started to run from the horror she had experienced. She clenched her teeth. She said that her jaw was cramped, and in an instant she felt that something had penetrated her and hurt her or something. She still tried to fight back, jumped up and turned on the light. I woke up my friend, and they both did not sleep until morning. And, as they say, drove tea. A friend, too, as it turned out, was scared, but still told her that the portrait shows some kind of whether her great-grandfather. When he was alive, he was a very strong sorcerer. When people came to him, he did not look at anyone, and if he looked at someone, then that person literally died in the near future. They never stayed in that apartment again. According to Courtney, after all, something has penetrated her, although not completely. She sometimes feels like someone's presence inside her. Sometimes he speaks, as if a lump rises in his throat and tries to escape. Sometimes she experiences gratuitous aggression. She did not address this illness to anyone. There was, however, an interesting case with her. When already being married, she and her husband and relatives visited some famous holy places, I do not remember where, and in those places a famous foreteller took people at that time. I don't remember his name. It's been about 8 years since Courtney told me about all these events. I only remember that he, according to her, was by that time already a very ancient old man, a long-lived man. And now they came to a large crowd that surrounded this sorcerer. One by one, people came up to him. Then suddenly he pointed to the crowd and, to everyone's surprise, called it. Although there were a lot of people and it was simply impossible to notice it all among all, when Courtney came over, he started talking to her about this and that. She didn't tell me anything. She just told me that he took her hands and then predicted that in the future she would treat people with her hands, and especially children. Immediately, of course, she did not understand what he meant, but after many years, she really began to treat with her hands. After working as a nurse in surgery, she went to a children's hospital and started working in a massage parlor. Most often works with heavy children with cerebral palsy. Well, finally, I want to tell you that no matter what fortune teller she came to, everyone, without exception, cannot view it, so to speak. Some even says, became for some reason aggressive and kicked her out. Could also call her names. This is hard to believe. For some reason, many people perceive her as some kind of arrogant, but in fact, she is a very kind and decent person. Here is such a story. Sometimes in the lives of ordinary people, it happens that it is difficult to believe.